Okay, let's talk about Texas Tech. We're going to summer camp. We're going to start continue our series looking at the 12 FBS teams in the state of Texas. We are going to start, on Tuesday.
Spit it out.
Got it. Thank you. Tuesday we did UTEP. Today we're doing Texas Tech, the Red Raiders, coming off of last year's mark where they went 4-8. 2-7 in conference in Matt Wells' first year. So let's talk first and foremost about the state of the program, right? Let's talk about where Texas Tech is. Obviously, 4-8 is not what they're looking for. That's not what they aspire to be at their highest level. But I would almost look at Texas Tech as a program that you can look at with some cautious optimism. I think last year, first of all, I think Tech was better than their record indicated last year. If you take a look at some of their results, right? Mm-hmm. They took Baylor on the road to double overtime and arguably should have beaten them.
Yes.
Right? Baylor, who played for the Big 12 title, right? They did that. They played Iowa State within 10 points, right? The loss to Kansas is a bad loss, right? Plain and simple. But they lost to TCU by 2. They lost to Kansas State by 3. Like, they were in a lot of games. They were in a lot of one-possession close games.
Without their, what you would expect to be, starting quarterback.
Bingo. They were without their starting quarterback with Matt Bowman.
Alan
Bowman. Well, who's Matt Bowman?
I don't know. I don't know a Matt Bowman. Is that a reporter somewhere?
Did I go to high school with a Matt Bowman? Bowman.
He might be a little out of the age range of a starting Texas Tech quarterback.
Alan Bowman. They were without Alan Bowman, right? They were without him. And so I think you can take a look at last year with Texas Tech and at the very least say, all right, I'm willing to see what happens this year. Like last year, if they would have gone 0-12 and looked miserable, then it's like, okay, what is going on here, right? That is I think that there are signs of life. I think there are signs that things are going well in Lubbock or trending in a positive direction under Matt Wells. Mm-hmm. And you talk to folks around the program, they'll tell you that they feel like the program is trending in the right direction. Now, eventually, you got to go out there and win some games. Right? So that's great that we can talk. This is second year.
Okay.
That's great that we can talk all about this. Now they got to go out there and execute it. That said, I think the state of the program is fair and improving. That's how I would classify what Texas Tech's state of the program is right now. Let's talk about the offense. So the offense last year were 11th nationally in yards per game in total offense, and that's without Alan Bowman for the Lions' share of the year. Right, that was without their starting quarterback. So now they bring back Alan Bowman, who figures to be 100%, who figures to be the starting quarterback, and a guy that I think when we've seen him play, when he can stay on the field, it's been pretty darn solid. Mm-hmm. And I think a guy that you can count on to be a really solid Big 12 quarterback.
But
I don't know if he's the best quarterback
to stay healthy.
I don't know if he's the best quarterback in the league, but I think that he is I think you can win with Alan Bowman, plain and simple. But he's pretty fragile, right? We've seen that. Now, it's weird. I don't know if I would classify him as fragile. Because a lot of his unlucky is almost closer, because a lot of his injuries have been kind of freakish and like weird, and like they haven't come on these hits that you go, oh wow, that's a big hit. Instead, it's just like, oh, what happened there? Why is he getting up slow?
And it's always been so early on in the season too. The guy can't catch a break.
Right. So I think if you take a look at the quarterback spot, you've got to feel pretty good about what they've got coming back. Running backs are going to be, I think, a bit of an adventure. Mm-hmm. I don't think the depth is there, right? They've got a guy in Sir Roderick Thompson that they feel like can be the guy that can step up and be the number one running back. But past that, it's like a lot of unknowns, right? It's a lot of unknowns there past Sir Roderick Thompson. The offensive line, am I boring you?
No, sorry. I yawned.
Texas Tech. We're talking Texas Tech here.
I'm words for Tech.
I'm excited. The offensive line. I think the offensive line has a chance to be pretty good, right? I like what they have. They have the interior, all three of the interior guys coming back, and Jack Anderson, Dawson Deaton, and Weston Wright, and I think that they form a pretty solid front there. I think that there's going to be a lot to – they've got to fill in the two tackles, right? We don't know what that's going to look like, and that's obviously critical to a team that is going to throw the ball a fair bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if they can get if they get Jack Anderson back healthy at the guard spot, and if they get those 2 tackles figured out, I think the offensive line could be pretty good. Receiver is interesting because on one hand, I think they have the deepest receiver core in the Big 12. Plain and simple. It's crazy how many quality receivers they have out there. In TJ Vasher, in Eric Ezukama, in Dawson Rigdon, in Keshawn Carter, in Caden Liggett, in Trey Cleveland. They have a lot of really, really good receivers on this roster. And that's not even counting guys like Travis Kuntz that I know, the Ohio guy, who I know they're really, really bullish on at the tight end spot. Okay? It's not even counting him. But here's the question. Who's the number one?
Right.
Who's the ace? Who's the go-to guy? Because right now, what it seems like, and this is not a knock, but it looks like they've got a lot of guys who I would be like, man, if that's your second best receiver, you're doing pretty well. But one of those guys has to step up, right? Is it TJ Vasher? I think they think that TJ Vasher can be that guy. Is it Eric Ezukama? I think that there are plenty of candidates. But one of them's got to grab the reins. One of them's got to go out there and grab that brass ring and say, I'm the number one receiver on this team.
And then if they do that and they've got 3 guys that are clear, easy seconds, then that makes up for the lack of running back.
Then you're in business, right? Then you're in business. But it's critical they find that number one guy. They got to find that one reliable star. So that's the offensive breakdown. Let's go to the defensive breakdown. Last year, this was a team that got bit hard by the injury bug. They flashed early when they were healthy, and then they got pretty much beat up, and the lack of depth kind of showed through. But the good news about that is that they do get a fair number of key pieces back. Now, they lose the number one guy. They lose a first-round draft pick. A first-round defensive draft pick, by the way.
Yep.
In Jordan Brooks. And they lose guys like Broderick Washington and Douglas Coleman up front. But I think that there's a lot of good potential on the defensive front. I think Eli Howard could be in for a breakout year. I really like what he brings to the defensive end spot. There's a lot of other kind of unproven guys, right? Tony Bradford, Xavier Benson, Jalen Hutchings, guys who could step up and be key contributors, and they need to be. The potential is there. We just don't know. I think linebacker may be their strongest spot, or at least has their number one best player. I think Rico Jeffers at the linebacker spot will be their best player and the most reliable player. When you add in guys like Karrison Merriweather and Tamarcus Fields, I think that this is a solid linebacker core. The secondary. This is I think it's weird to say this about Tech. I feel pretty good about their corners.
Which is not
When
normally
is the last
case.
time you said, boy, you know what? Strength of Texas Tech, cornerback.
Well, even their entire secondary in general.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
There's some questions. I have some questions at safety. They need to fill in some gaps at safety. But when you're going to have Zach McPherson and Adrian Fry at the cornerback spots,
that's not terrible.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And then Big 12,
Oh yeah.
that's right near the top. That's pretty good. So I like what they bring back defensively. And then I think that this is a defense that has a chance to be. It's again, how healthy do they stay, and what does the depth look like if they start getting if they start getting beat up? That's a big question. And so let's talk about worst case scenario. If you take a look at their schedule, I think that another 4-8 year would represent a pretty big disappointment.
Yes.
Now, it's easy to see how that happens, right? They don't find guys to fill in those defensive gaps.
Right.
They can't get a number one receiver. They can't get a number one receiver. Alan Bowman gets hurt again, right? Especially with now Jed Duffy gone.
Yep.
They don't really have that known commodity at the backup spot, right? They've got some guys they like, but they don't have that known commodity at the backup spot. So it's easy to see how that happens. The tackles don't figure it out,
absolutely.
right? It's easy to see how they do that, right? If you get there and you go 4-8 is easy to see. That I think would be worst case scenario. Offense kind of can't figure it out. Defense takes a step back without those key pieces. 4-8 again. But let's talk about best case scenario. Okay, if you look at their schedule, right? At UTEP, Alabama State, Arizona. All due respect to our friend Kevin Sumlin, I think they should be 3-0.
Yes.
Okay,
I
think that they should be 3-0.
Mm-hmm.
They start off, and then you take a look at some of the games that they get. A lot of their toughest games are going to be at home,
which you don't want to play there.
You get Oklahoma at home in the season finale, right? You get Texas at home, right? Now, we don't know what Baylor's going to look like necessarily, but you get Baylor at home, right? You don't have to travel to West Virginia. Now, you do have to go to Oklahoma State. You have to go to Kansas State, which has not been particularly kind to Texas Tech. And you have to go to Iowa State. But I do think that you go to Iowa State early when they're going to have, I think, some question marks. I think the schedule lines up that if you do not have to squint, you really do not have to squint to see 9 wins.
No.
I think that you can look at this team, and if things click, and again, it's a big if because there's a lot of pieces that have to fall into place. But if things click, we're talking about a team that I think could be the surprise of the Big 12.
Right, and I think that it'll be very easily to see if that's going to be the case after those first 3 games. Those 3 games are critical before they get into those big home games that they have got to need out all of those question marks. And if they can do that, then yeah, we're going to be high on Texas Tech.
Exactly. And that's here's the thing. We talked about those 3 games, right? UTEP, Alabama State, Arizona. Okay. September 26th, they play at Iowa State. If they win that, they come home to play West Virginia. Then they get a bye week, and they come home and they play Baylor. Okay. At that point, what I'm saying is 6-0 is not outside the realm of possibility with a huge home game, a huge home game against Texas the next
following the bye week.
Following the bye week, right? That would be at that point the hype train's going to start running. But that key, I think that turn game. First of all, you got to take care of business against 3 teams I think you're better than in UTEP, Alabama State, and Arizona.
That Iowa State game.
If you go to Iowa State and you come away with a win, that's when people are going to start looking around and be like, "Oh, what's Texas Tech got cooking?"
Yeah.
That's, I think, the best case scenario. Anyway, thanks for coming around the campfire, guys. Please remember, put on some bug spray. Watch out for that.